So I grow up going to the best schools. I go to UNC Chapel Hill. Any Tar Heels? Okay, did I hear a woo? All right, somebody over here. Okay, so I go to UNC Chapel Hill. I go to Wall Street and work at Morgan Stanley. And then I go to Columbia Law School and yes, get all the grades, win all the awards, all the things. Eventually, I marry a firefighter, and we have these two beautiful kids. Aren't they yummy? Yes, they are. Can I tell you I don't remember taking this picture? Because I was hustling. I had started my own practice by this point, and I was going to every possible networking event, hustling at the gym, missing dinner. Kids started asking me, Mom, where are you? And I started having marital problems. Because all I was doing was trying to get to the next client, make the next goal, make the money, make cash flow. And I was so focused on the achievement that I forgot to be present for my kids, to enjoy them in the moment. Because all of my self-worth, my self-value, my self-love was rooted in achievement, in what people thought about me. Because that's what I was conditioned to believe. I was imprisoned by my own limiting beliefs, by my cultural norms, by my assumptions that honestly create value destructions for all of us. Anybody here have some limiting beliefs that we just want to ignore sometimes, right? I see a lot of shaking heads. Or maybe we're stuck in what we believe our culture, in my case, my Indian culture. And it's not that it was like a duty, it was like a self-imposed obligation that I put on myself. To do all the right things, right? To achieve, to keep pushing harder. So it's in this context, when my kids are 2 and 3, that I get the chance to meet a real estate developer. Now, who knows and remembers what was happening in 2007? Okay, so I'm in South Florida, right, like the heyday location for real estate, and I'm a real estate attorney. Now, at this point, right, I had been hustling, pushing, trying to make cash flow, and I get the opportunity to meet a real estate developer. So what's going on in my head is, oh my God, I gotta get this client. Right? Like I was so hungry for financial stability so I could be home with my kids. So I remember I walked into his office, which was in Miami Beach, and actually the developer himself sat in a side office. His 2 right-hand guys, his operations guys, came into the conference room, and they basically began to describe what they were doing. They said, we've been using this big law firm, but we'd like to start using you, which, by the way, should have been a huge red flag. Right? But at the time, I was so focused on getting the client, I was like, oh. And I was like arrogant, and I was flattered. So they began to describe what they were doing, which is they were giving buyer incentives to buy their condo units. Now, by this point, I had already been practicing in my solo practice for about 3 years. I had done a ton of closings already for bigger developers with bigger law firms representing the buyer, in this case. And so I knew that lots of developers were doing buyer incentives. So I made assumptions, and I jumped. And even though my gut felt wrong, I was so quick to silence my inner voice. Because I wanted this client. I needed this client. I convinced myself with justifications and assumptions and rationalizations that it must be okay because all these other big firms are doing the same thing. So within 2 weeks, I had my first closing request, and it was like a steamroll came in, and I never took the time or made the time to do the due diligence that I should have done as an attorney. So a couple months later, it was Christmas Eve. My entire family descends into Miami. So I have a huge Indian family, right? So my aunties, my uncles, my cousins, my nieces, my nephews, everyone from everywhere descends into Miami. It's Christmas Eve. We've just drank eggnog. The Christmas music is playing. You can smell the pine tree. We've made Christmas cookies, and we've left them for Santa, right? And it's 8 o'clock in the evening, and I go into my kids' bedroom to make them sleep. So Maya's in her crib, Kyler's in his toddler bed, and I'm sitting in the glider. Some of you might remember what those were. And I'm singing to my children. आजकल में डल गया दिन हुआ तमाम. It's the same lullaby that my parents used to sing to me. And I can still get nostalgic. So I'm sitting in the glider, and I look down at my BlackBerry. Okay, this is how old this was, how long ago this was. Now, I'm a solo practitioner. It's 8 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Do you think anybody expects me to look at an email or even respond to an email? Somebody's shaking their head, yes. Well, yeah, because I'm a solopreneur, and I pride myself on customer service and feedback and response time for my clients. So yes, I open my email as I'm singing to my children. And there's an email that pops in regarding a closing happening in 2 days. And in the email, there's one line, and there's an attachment. And I read the email, and I'm like, oh, that feels like a sucker punch. But okay, we've talked about it a little bit. There's an attachment. I'm sure it's fine. And I forward the email. Assuming that my closing coordinator would tell me if there was something wrong with the attachment. Now, the buck stops with me, right? I can't count on her. So why do I forward this email so quickly when clearly my gut was screaming? Well, I have a house full of relatives. It's almost Christmas morning. The kids are not yet sleeping, and none of my presents are wrapped. Has anybody ever forwarded an email and maybe not opened it, looked at it, paid attention to it, give it the time it's due? Y'all are all fraud people, so maybe not. You'll hear in a bit what happened with that email. So over the next 15 months, I worked with this client, and I did about 200 closings for him in Miami and in Tampa. And then I merged my practice with my father's, who's now also an attorney. My mom is too, by the way. And we're not even doing transactional work anymore. We're litigating. I'm actually representing the government. I'm doing Fannie and Freddie loans. I'm representing the big banks. And now we're doing litigation work. In 2011, in May, 2 FBI agents showed up at my office. Now, I don't know how many of you have dealt with the FBI. You guys are in government, so maybe. I had never, ever dealt with the FBI, and it was really freaking scary. And I actually didn't know that I could say to them, hey, can I take your card and call you when I have my attorney? And you know what? They're like banking on that intimidation factor, which I was really scared. But I also, in my head, thought to myself, I didn't do anything wrong. My files have passed audit, right? This is 4 years later. So I let them into my office, and I used to have this circular table next to my desk, and these 2 people sat there and for 4 hours grilled me. They showed me pictures and documents and emails, and I was answering these questions, yes, no, as if I could even remember what happened 4 years earlier, right? Nobody has that kind of memory. And I was so naive. I did not understand the reach of the federal government, and I certainly didn't know that I could say no. 2 more years go by, and I get a grand jury subpoena for documents. So I'm still operating with this pretense I haven't done anything wrong. Within 3 months, my attorney called me into his office, and he said, "You're a target." I don't even know what that meant. And when he explained it to me, I thought my life was over. And I didn't get it. And eventually, in April 2014, I was indicted for 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and 24 counts of bank fraud. So they took 24 of the 200 closings, attached it to the complaint, and indicted me. And it was really important to my family after I got indicted to tell our Indian community. My parents are leaders in our community. So we invited all of my aunties and uncles over. We fed them samosas, of course. And my dad stood in the corner, and I was sitting on the sofa. And my dad told everybody. And he was crying. And I was crying. And my mom, who was sitting here, she's hard as nails. And this uncle right here, who is sitting next to me, says to me, Beti, which in Hindi means daughter, one day you realize this is not happening to you, it's happening for you. And I didn't get it at the moment, but it was like a seed that got planted in the back of my head. Like, okay, this is happening for me. I just can't see it yet. But in this moment, I had been indicted. All I could do was reframe. This was a massive negative that absolutely did not fit my plan and absolutely felt like failure. But what I was able to do is to recognize, like, I don't know why this is happening, but I'm going to trust and convert this negative in my mind to a positive. And I was scared out of my mind every day, but I could see, okay, I'm going to reframe this. And for me, that looked like eventually taking ownership. So a couple months later, my attorney calls me into his office with my parents, and he said, look, come in, we need to talk to you and your parents. And trial was set for 4 months later, so we thought we're walking in to talk about trial, like expert witnesses, my testimony, exhibits, our strategy, right? All the things you would talk about to prepare for trial. And David, who was my attorney, is a very close friend of mine. His wife went to Carolina with me. Our kids have been in place together. We live a mile from each other. Like, I've known him 25 years. So we walk into his office, and he gives this whole presentation. He goes, Rashmi, if we go to trial, the government is going to put up their case and use this evidence. And then we're going to put up our defense, and we're going to use this evidence. And then the government's going to put up their rebuttal. Any guess on their evidence? The email. How could a split-second decision, how could I have known? And yes, there was lots of other evidence, but that was a pivotal piece of evidence because it showed that I knew. It showed intention. And then he said to me, Rashmi, I know you. You didn't walk into this planning a crime. But here's the thing. You knew enough. And as an attorney, you had a fiduciary duty to do more. You should have listened to your gut. And then he said, not doing something is still doing something wrong. Right? I'm going to say it again. Not doing something is still doing something wrong. And you all know that. This is the industry you guys are in. This is why this conference exists. And he said, Rashmi, you're going to have a coming to Jesus moment. Which, by the way, is funny because he's Jewish and I'm Hindu. But it was literally the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I took off my fighting hat and I put on ownership. And I recognized that I knew. I just didn't want to admit it to myself. And God, this did not look like success. It felt like failure. And I kept telling myself, I have to reframe this, I have to reframe this. So before I go forward, I want to do a quick little challenge for all of you. So I'm going to put up a couple of statements about somebody that I'd love to get for you to guess who I'm talking about. I have I just came from Idaho from an event yesterday, so I have a local Idaho chocolatier, chocolate truffles for whoever guesses. And there's a little story about chocolate that we're going to get to in a bit. So here's my challenge. This guy was in foster care in Georgia. He was kicked out of his home when he was 16 for selling drugs. If you guess it, scream it out. At the age of 3, he could recite all of Jose Marti's poems by heart. In 2024, he bought naming rights to a college football stadium. He co-founded the tuition-free SLAM charter school, And after Hurricane Maria, who is it? No, not Mark Cuban. He quietly sent his own jet to ferry Puerto Rican cancer patients to the mainland for chemo. Can anybody guess? Okay, I have a hint. Yes, a little 305 for you. So the answer is Armando Christian Perez, Pitbull. So here's the thing, right? Pitbull, who is a genius entrepreneur, who was it that guessed it? Was it you? So not all of us are trying to be Pitbull, an artist, right? But this guy came from nothing, like literally from the pits, no pun intended. But he, who was in foster care, got kicked out of his home. He says to me, we're actually now really good friends. I've spoken now for his school. I've been the commencement speaker at his school. He's the nicest, kindest human, but he came from nothing. And he says that failure is just an opportunity to try again. He is the epitome of reframing failure. Reframing when things go wrong, when your mom kicks you out of your house, right? And you might not like his music, but you can at least admire the guy for his entrepreneurial stuff. Like, I love his music. Like, I'll dance with you if you want, right? Right? But Pitbull has this incredible ability to reframe struggle. So before we get to my definition, does anybody want to shout out a definition or a word that they relate to struggle? I mean, you guys are dealing with it all right now. Anybody? One word. Resilience. Change. What was it? Overcome. Persevere. Opportunity. Wow, you guys are really positive. I love this crowd. Growth. Fear. There we go. Struggle is hard. It's scary. Somebody over here said something. I mean, there's no right or wrong, right? Like, struggle looks differently for all of us. For some of it, it's legal, medical, marital, financial, mental health. And for some of us, it looks like uncertainty, fear, anxiety, overwhelm, stress, disruption, getting laid off, right? So this is my definition of struggle. No right or wrong answer. It's the shock of uncertainty that disrupts your path. The discomfort that stays with you and tests your patience. The invitation to wrestle with it and allow it to slowly transform you into who you are becoming. Because by the way, struggle doesn't just come and go in a split second, does it? And sometimes we're facing struggle multiple times a day, all at once. I mean, we're all, humans having families at home, so we might have family stuff happening, but we also have work stuff happening, and maybe you're also involved in the community, so you've got community stuff happening. So multiple times a day, we're dealing with struggle, and struggle doesn't just come and go. So as I said to you earlier, right, like I spent my whole life thinking I could just avoid the struggle if I just followed my plan. And now what I've learned is that struggle isn't the detour. It's the doorway into something that I can't see yet, right? I don't know what that doorway is leading me into. I had no idea 10 years ago I would be standing in front of all of you. And it's such an honor that I get to do this.